have more understanding than all my teachers, for thy testimony is on my meditation. I understand more than the ancients, because I keep thy precepts. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. My name is Paul Stringini. Coming to a new chapter in the book of Matthew. There we go. So, all right. I feel like I sound like I'm in a tin can today. If that's the case, I could use a text. Well, let's begin, because the first verse will immediately bring us up to speed. There, I did it again. And it came to pass, when Jesus had made an end of commanding his 12 disciples, he departed thence to teach and to preach in their cities. So that was the last chapter. He was commanding his disciples. He called to him the 12, and then he sent them out to teach and to preach. He sent them out with instructions, and then also he himself. I got a tingly nose this morning. There's like a tingle. I feel like I'm going to sneeze, and that may happen. So, Jesus goes out to teach and preach in the cities of Samaria. I gotta blow my nose for a second. Believe it or not, I've been doing that for the past half hour, so it's not like I didn't think of doing it ahead of time. Okay, let's go on to interesting things. Now, when John had heard in the prison the works of Christ, he sent 2 of his disciples, and said unto them, Art thou he that should come, or do we look for another? Well, he speaks to Jesus in a little bit of a code there. You know, he could be talking about anything. Are you the delivery boy we're waiting for, or is there another guy? He'd been cast into prison. I don't think it mentions why here. I think it ends up being mentioned when they talk about his execution. He was cast into prison for saying the wrong things. You say the wrong things, you go to jail. That's a lot of times the way of the world in human history. That's why the protection of perfection. Yeah, it's perfection too, but it's interesting Freudian slip there. I said it again. The protection of free speech is so essential, so that you can, because what he said is, it's not lawful for you to marry your brother's wife. You know, he fancied his brother's wife. And basically had his brother divorce her so he could marry her. And, that's saying that that's wrong can get you beheaded, apparently. Right? In the wrong circumstances. That's what happens when you give men power. They don't like criticism. And that's what a lot of the attacks on free speech today are all about. Is that better? Okay. I don't know. It's all about people taking power, wanting to exert power. They want to control what people can say about them. They don't want to hear things. People don't like to be told what they do is sinful. Even if they, it's odd because they don't even believe in the things. Like, they don't even believe in things like heaven and hell. So why would it disturb them if someone said, well, you're going to go to hell or whatever? Because it's some sort of indictment of them. It is a claim that there's something, morally flawed about them. It's interesting to me that even when people reject God, they reject things like the Bible or traditional morality. It's not enough for them to go, yeah, I'm a sinner. Because, the idea that they've missed the mark or somehow gone astray still bugs them. Because on some level, though they believe not traditional morality, they still believe in morality. They believe in wanting to be right. So they want to have their, I don't like, oh, that's my computer. my other computer. I gotta clean the fans out. So they don't want to be told what you do is wrong, what you do is sinful. They want to be shown to be. They want to be declared righteous. There's no avoiding it. So, they want to. So, in order to be declared righteous, they want no one to declare they're unrighteous. Very few people would dare to speak against a king because of the power. But, in a democracy, we have the mob. And when the mob starts saying, okay, when you get enough people on your side, it'll say, like, such things should not be said. Now you got to fear the mob. And few people are going to speak against the mob. The mob is every bit as deadly. They can do just as much damage as a king when you give them power, when you don't have laws that rule your land. That's the problem with democracy. In democracy, the people are king. Sorry. You want to have it's more important to have good laws, good rules. Democracy is overrated. Because in its pure form, it is as much a tyranny as any monarchy. It is as tyrannical as any monarchy or dictatorship. It's just a dictatorship of mass opinion. Is it less likely to go that way? I don't see why. Why is it more likely for the mass of people to be wise than it is for one man? I mean, I see a point where you could say it takes a lot more for it to go wrong. For a bunch of people to be possessed of a really bad idea. Remember the atrocities of the 20th century were all brought about through democracy. And a revolution is a form of democracy. All right, one big sniff. Okay. So, it bugs me that, like, oh, there we go. What is that right? Yeah, that's better. Or was my headphones the whole time? Just sounded tin can. All right, now I know I've been wasting time thinking about that. All right, so he speaks kind of in code. Are you the one that's coming, or are we waiting for another? And I hope that's obvious to you what he really means. He's saying, are you the Messiah? Because he gets wind of this. And whatever happened at Jesus' baptism, he wasn't certain. Okay? Jesus answered and said to him, "Go and show John again those things which ye do hear and see." Using the emphatic. Which ye do hear and see. What specifically? The blind receive their sight, and the lame walk. The lepers are cleansed, and the deaf hear. The dead are raised up, and the poor have the gospel preached unto them. The good news. And blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. The idea of offense and all that, is pretty straightforward. The blind are able to see. God, the idea is that the powers of God are being shown in the person of Christ. As I talk about life and death, God is able to give life. God is able to give sight. That makes him different from us. You think like it's funny that people will get a little bit like the miracles is a tough pill to swallow for some people. And I don't know if you start out thinking like that the whole world, the whole experience, the whole show. Hold on, sorry. I'm a grotesque person. There we go. The whole show is made by God. But there is a God behind it all. And why that should be more outrageous than the whole thing's just it's nothing actually. Everything is actually equivalent to nothing. And comes from nothing and is nothing. You know what I'm saying? Like there's no... The implication of power is that there is all power. And God is all power. That power. Whatever you might say in addition to that, or how you might conceptualize that, there is all power. There is the source of knowledge. It's like it doesn't just arise willy-nilly out of nowhere. And you say, well, where does God arise from? God doesn't arise. It just, that is. We know this arises. Now, this has a history. It's not like if it was just all here all the time, I guess you could, whatever. A different class of being. He doesn't just like, so, we look at Christ healing the blind, we're like, wow, that's kind of unbelievable for some people. But once if you believe in a creator, he created sight. I mean, there was no seeing and God made sight. There was no hearing and God made hearing. There was no walking and God made things to move. There was death and nothing but death, and then God brought about life. Of the dead, of the dust of the earth, he made man and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. It's a bigger miracle than anything Jesus did. Like the fact that we are here, and we are what we are. The other day I was talking, and now it's becoming conscious to me again. I was talking to my wife, and the motion of my tongue over my mouth, in my mouth, as I spoke, became very, became very conscious of it. Because you speak unconsciously all the time. Isn't that odd? Like I have so many things to say, a lot of things to articulate, and my mouth is just dancing and moving with no thought. Like of how to form all those words. They just form like a, it's a autonomic process. You don't, you know, like you learn how to speak, and then afterwards you just speak. As a child, you learn to speak, but it's almost magical. Like when you start thinking about how that your mouth is moving and you're making these varying sounds, and the variation in the sounds you're making actually makes sense. That you can articulate complex ideas, and it's something that only we do. There is something so the power of speech is such a amazing thing that we have, but the fact that there would come about the power of speech, the fact of all these things that they come into being, is an astonishing. You know, it's like it's awful suggestive. I would never say that anything that that there's, you know, that such and such is proof or whatever of God's existence, but when I look at the world, the idea of God is strongly suggested. You know, and if you've turned your eyes away from that suggestion, if you've become blind to it and just say, no, we've got to be skeptical about this. Or why not? I'm of a different opinion. My opinion is that we ought to be curious about it. You know what I mean? Well, we ought to be curious. People who are instead like, no, we shouldn't be curious. We should be, we should sit back, fold our arms, and say, prove it to me. What if there are things that evade proof, like intentionally? What do you do with that? Well, it's got to prove itself to me. I don't need it. Oh, you shall not have it. Blessed is he whosoever shall not be offended in me. And I'm pretty sure, I'm going to look real quick, that word is, darn it, scandalizo. I think I just butchered it. I'm actually going to open up a different browser window here. All right. Yes. Sorry, I had that open to the right page, and then no, I didn't. I believe it's scandalizo. Scandalizo means the thing. It is the thing, and we have our word scandal. It comes from it, or to scandalize. But that really is kind of a strange thing. Like when we think of offense, we don't think of scandal, meaning we think of the reaction to the scandal, you know, not the thing, not the scandal itself. But actually, a scandal is the proper thing. They have fallen into a scandal. They've been, you know, like they've fallen into something bad, a trap. Let me see here. Like for example, like a politician takes a bribe. You know, and this is really ticking me off. That's just not working. Ugh. No. All right. So I'll close that. All right. Sorry, my that's not right. Well, I see there's no questions. That's good. Okay, we're only 18 minutes into it. Right now I finally got my Bible collection correctly. I had this all set up at the beginning of the study, but of course, what can go wrong will go wrong. That's why. And the funny thing is, all I want to do is just check the word before I go off about it and, say something wrong. And of course, it's going to be scandalizo. Yeah, it's scandalizo, Paul. To put a snare in the way, hence to cause to stumble, to give offense. It means to ensnare. And that obviously ensnare sounds. The reason that word is always, I've always kind of had a little bit of a problem with that, because when I think of ensnarement, I think of the intent of the one who ensnares. You know what I mean? Like they're like an entrapment. But like it is, what it is like it is an entrapment, but it's not about the intent of the person causing the offense. It's the one who takes offense. It's so easy to because you think of a snare, someone has to set a snare. And it's sort of an evil device. You know what I mean? It is set out to catch, to harm. But that's not the sense in which this word is used. It is used, because that would imply that Jesus is doing something to scandalize people. He would not say he was doing anything wrong. But they were being scandalized or ensnared or stumbling or falling into a trap. And because of whatever he was doing. Think about it. John the Baptist scandalized King Herod by saying, "You should not take. It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." It wasn't covered here, but I just know this fact. That was what got him put in prison and ultimately beheaded. And that's the problem, is that people take offense at your words, and then they want to say, "You did something to me. I mean, you harmed me. I'm in this place of scandalizement." I just made up that word. It's not really a word, but whatever. I'm in this place of offense. And you're responsible for it because of what you said. And the word, putting it in those terms like as a trap, from what I understand, it actually means the trap stick, the thing that causes someone to become ensnared. The cause of ensnarement. But if that's the case, that cause of ensnarement is I may be responsible for someone's offense. Jesus also says, blesses, whoever shall cause one of these little ones to stumble. Like the giving of offense can be my responsibility. Like I may be responsible morally for having given someone offense. Or not. And it's very important to be able to tell the difference. We sometimes, this is a problem for a lot of Christians. A lot. Because on the one hand, we know that if we're speaking the righteous truth and people are offended, if they take offense, we say, well, if you're offended, then be offended. It's a righteous thing. I speak the truth. And you're taking offense is more a product of your own pride, and you may be involved in sin. And, if you're involved in a sin and someone says that's a sin and you take offense, you fall into this position of feeling somehow made prey by it, victimized, as they say. That's your fault. But I can also give offense, or be offensive in the way I say things, and I can end up being responsible for that. But honestly, when Jesus says that, like, whoever shall give offense to these little ones, he's being, as he often is, he's concerned with the weak and the least and the smallest, with the poor. The poor of the gospel preached to them. He's always concerned with those that are on the margins. And so he concerns himself with the marginal case. It is much better to have, at least legally, you don't want to have, you want to err on the side of the offender. Someone who speaks words that are offensive should not be a legal thing, unless they're speaking words that are like, you're not allowed to libel. Like, I'm not allowed to say, John Smith. That's a name I just drew out of a hat just now. John Smith, was arrested for drunk driving last week. Did you know that? And I just go around telling everybody, oh, John Smith was he was actually convicted several years ago. That's something that happened. In fact, that's happened a couple times. I'm making up stories about the guy. And especially, I'm going to his employer or something like that. There was sometimes in divorces you get like some nasty stuff going on between the husband and the wife, like going around to someone's neighbors and telling them, like, let's say they're living somewhere and go around telling people things to get them driven out of town, speaking lies. So obviously lies are unacceptable in any form. So if you're causing offense through lies, that's why with doctrine it's important to have the right doctrine. What if you're causing offense through false doctrine? That's why I find it is much more desirable to preach righteousness than to... You can't preach hell. What are you preaching? You're not preaching... You're not proclaiming the kingdom. You are trying to threaten people into fear. When really, if you look at Jesus' references to hellfire, he's talking about specific sins, how grievous they are. Like I said, calling a brother a fool. That's not, that's in the same that's in the same category as things like murder. It's like you murder, you say raka, you call him a fool. When you start dehumanizing people, there's no bottom. It leads to, well, what are we going to do with these stupid people? I hear it all the time. People say, stupid people shouldn't breed. And the truth is, they would look at me and say, I'm stupid. It doesn't matter where my intelligence actually lays, or like, give me a test. Give me an intelligence test. Come on, hand it over, and I'll take it. And then what I mean? Like, and they'd say, well, what makes you stupid is the opinions you hold. And that's where it goes. People are, they have opinions, and then they don't like them. And they want to say, oh, they're stupid. And so they deal with them. They want, that leads to having them dealt with. And the bodies just pile up. The horrors. Jesus, anyone who was offended at Jesus in his lifetime, he knew that their offense, happy are you when men shall say all manner of evil against you and persecute you for my name's sake. Blessed are you when men shall revile you and persecute you and say all manner of evil against you. That's Matthew 5. Falsely. Falsely for my sake. If they're saying all those things and it's true, you kind of have it coming. That was loud. You know, if what they say about you is true, you've got it coming. Okay, we'll just quickly... I get bored of this. Subscribe, like, click on the like button. That's where you'll find my Bible studies. That's my other YouTube channel. It's got my name on it. I just want to start a fresh channel just to have all this stuff. I want it to be one thing. And so there you go. If you have questions, send them to questions@oraclesofgod.org. There's a link in the description below. I haven't checked that this week yet, but I'll check it right after the study and see where we're at. I almost added, hopefully there's no questions. I do like questions, but I mean, I'm not anxious for them, so that's fine. It's just something I got. Then that's more work. Something to take care of. I already have something in the queue here from someone that I will get to. So anyways, we'll just say that, you know, there'll be more to say about offense in the days to come. And as they departed, Jesus began to say unto the multitudes concerning John, What went ye out into the wilderness to see? A reed shaken with the wind? But what went ye out for to see? A man clothed in soft raiment? Behold, they that wear soft clothing are in kings' houses. But what went ye out? But what went ye out for to see? A prophet? Yea, I say unto you, and more than a prophet. For this is he of whom it was written, Behold, I send my messenger before thy face, which shall prepare thy way before thee. Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, Verily I say unto you, among them that are born of women, there hath not risen a greater than John the Baptist. Notwithstanding, he that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. I hate having to deal with this verse today. And from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffereth violence, and the violent take it by force. And for all the prophets and the law prophesied until John. And if you will receive it, this is Elias, which was for to come. He that hath ears to hear, let him hear. All right, we'll definitely not get to verse 16. There's a lot to cover there. I don't even know if we'll get through all of this. So this is what Jesus starts saying to all the people, the multitudes, about John. What he had to say about John. John the Baptist. I need some water here. My throat's just dry. Anyways, okay. What do you have to say about John? I need a haircut. Okay. What did you go out in the wilderness to see? What did you think you were going to see? And he gets to it. You wanted to see a prophet, didn't you? You thought you would see a prophet. He was out in the wilderness clothed in a garment of camel's hair. You know, it was not in rough clothes, like a frontier-like figure. You know, someone clothed it like in buckskin, so to speak. You know, because camel's hair, that's rough. eating out there eating honey and bugs. That was the John the Baptist diet. Honey and locusts. What'd you expect? A reed shaken in the wind? Someone, when this is what happens to people, and I see it already. This is a problem with a lot of churches, that they are so reactionary. I don't mean reactionary like in the communist sense, where they're trying to go, anti-revolutionary. I mean they react to things, to societies moving this way or moving that way. So, and here's the thing: we want to give a reaction. We want when things happen, when things change, like something goes on, like something significant happens, we react. We say, "This is what we think about it." But what I mean, and what the problem is, they react like this. I'm trying to. Oh wait, hold on. I got it. A half hour in, and the sneeze came. I didn't get to see what that looked like. It probably looked horrific. My eyes are watering. I got a deep itch in my nose. I don't have a cold, but I have a deep itch. It's probably a piece of dust lodged up there. It's just tingling. But it looks scary when I get that close to look at my red eye, and I'm like, yeah, that's real pleasant, Paul. So, what they do is they say, I had it right on the tip of my brain. They react. Oh, this is just too much. Like, if something becomes a big issue in society, like the world decides. I remember now. This pastor was like, "We need to talk more about domestic violence." That was like a thing 20 years ago, or maybe it's still a thing. I don't know. And like they're reacting to the whims of the time, the thing that people is popular. And what? And I'm certainly no apologist for you shouldn't hit people. No striker. That's what the scriptures say. Bishops and stuff. I mean, yeah, you don't hit your wife. And wives, don't provoke your husbands. Right? That's part of it too. All right? People will come to blows. They start provoking each other. Make peace. Happy other people. I thought we always had this whole thing. Don't beat your wife. Come on. Love your wife. That's what the scriptures say. I can't think of any scripture that says beat your wife. It's not in there. I never got that impression. I've read the book. We got to start, Christianity is probably where we got the thought that maybe we shouldn't beat our wives. Husbands love your wives. Cherish them. That's our thing. But suddenly, I got a pastor I see on the YouTube or whatever, saying, he's new and hip and telling us where we need to go as far as churches, and we need to talk more about domestic violence. It's not even... Wives, don't hit your husbands. That happens too, In fact, it happens just as often. In fact, probably more. Women hit men more. It's less effective, obviously, because men are, on average, going to be bigger, stronger, and tougher. And so there's less of there's not much of a price, if a woman hits a man. If a guy hits a woman, it's like devastating, you can break her. I can hurt my wife just by hugging her, too hard. Gotta be careful with the woman, be gentle. And so, but maybe that's not a great example. But I mean, what I'm saying is, it's like the example I've overused. I went into a church once here. I don't go to church a lot, and the subject is unwrapping sex. We're going to talk about sex in church and how it is a wonderful thing for a husband and wife to enjoy together. It's like, not everybody's married here. Why don't you do that with some sort of couples thing? I feel like, didn't your parents talk to you about the birds and the bees? Didn't they talk to you about the facts of life? Didn't they? Didn't they describe the joys of marriage at some point? They should have. And we got to go over this in church. That's the doctrine. We don't want, and when opinion sways one way, they are of that opinion. Public opinion. When the winds are going this way, when it's convenient to be of this opinion, that's the way they go. And then when it's that other opinion, that's the way they go. They are not founded on a rock, but they are on the shifting sands of the whims and opinions of people, which are always in motion. Nothing wrong with revising our opinions based on new information. In fact, this scripture, a reed shaken with the wind, you got to juxtapose that with the scripture about the wineskins. You can be so hard, so set in your ways, that you can't accept anything new. That which is strong is not that which is brittle. You know what I mean? One of the advantages of steel over iron. Pure iron is brittle. It breaks. You don't want something brittle. It can shatter. It's a negative thing. You don't want you can say a good. I don't know. It's one of those things you have to use the spirit. Like, understand, when should I be flexible? But if it's just to sway with public opinion, then you might have a reflex to maybe not be so flexible. It's because people's opinions change. It's like, in this country, all of a sudden, it's like, as soon as the Supreme Court decided it was okay for gays to be married, everyone's opinion just changed. I was always of the opinion that it was ridiculous, but you should just let them do it, because until you do, they will keep pushing, and then now we've got laws. Now it becomes like this, like, we don't just... I understand it's whatever, it's like, I understand why people are upset, but I'm telling you, laws are not the way to go. You got to change people. If you want to change your society, you have to sway opinion. Because if the people are all going one way, you're not going to, the politicians and all that, they're going to go right along with them. And if that, and then if once it gets decided up on top, changing it, you can't, putting the genie back in the bottle is not going to happen without some huge upheavals in society. But then it's too late. Let us not be reeds shaken in the wind. Neither should we be like old wineskins. Or you can't put a new piece of cloth on an old garment. Well, and then in verse 8, would you go out there to see a man clothed in soft raiment? This is a soft cotton shirt, right? But you know, soft clothes these days. Obviously, we have access to these. I mean, the weave on this T-shirt is amazing. You looked at the, you look at cloth. We hardly look at it anymore. In Jesus' time, I mean, they would be like, you buy cloth, you just be like looking at it. You know, like you bring out something like this. I mean, are you kidding me? You know, they had I mean, they had fine cloth and fine weaving ability, but it was all done by hand. Not with the tiny precision of a machine. I mean, I'm just saying, we just have amazing modern cloths. And to have a cloth that was soft to the touch, it was very expensive. They that wear soft clothing are in the king's houses. And you could break clothes in and they soften up a bit, right? That's a nice part. Leather's good for that. John had the leather girdle about his loins, yeah. I was like that. And he wore a big leather belt. But, you know, he was not, you know, they that wear it's a bit of a mockery of those, right? What'd you think you were going to find out there? Some sort of king's courtier? Some sort of court jester? Some sort of court advisor? Hold on. We know John wore rough garments. I would not, I just wear what I have at hand, as far as, I don't, is it what would be the equivalent today? Well, tailored suits, you don't want to be, putting on pretensions. I mean, me, like I'm wearing a simple t-shirt and a sweatshirt because I'm trying to be just a regular guy. It's just, I am just a regular guy. There's no, I got one suit that fits me right now. I don't even think I have other suits that don't fit me anymore. Well, I might, but I think I gave them to my sons. Not the same size I was when I was 18. So, I'm not going to... It'd be weird to put on a suit every day and sit here at my desk like the way I never do. I only put the suit on for weddings, But I'm saying we shouldn't be pretentious in our clothing. Like I said, like trying to appear regular and everyday. John wore those clothes genuinely. You know what I mean? At the time, it was like, it was significant because, like I said, like the people, people in general, and to this day, they respect authority figures. They do. Politicians, judges, pastors, they get all the respect, and they wear a certain sort of uniform. To be a significant person, people listen to, or to get a lot of people to listen to you, you kind of got to put on the uniform. You got to look the part to be authoritative. Like, and you can do the same thing. Like if you want to talk about science, you want people to think you're more authoritative, put on a lab coat. It'll just make it seem, even if you're just an ignoramus, you'll seem more believable. And John wasn't clothed in the garments of respect, that would cause people to say, oh, look, there's an important person, the man of God. Would you want to see a prophet? Well, that's what you wanted to say. I say to you that he was more than a prophet. For this is he. He was the one written of is this Malachi? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Malachi. I'm just gonna guess and just go right to Malachi. The end of the Old Testament. That's not quite the same. No, alright, I want to know. Inquiring minds want to know. And I gotta go back to the book, to my Bible. Yes, that's duct tape. I had this one for about 20 years, and I don't care to replace it. There's too many notes I've written down. So we got... I'm thinking it's Isaiah chapter 40, actually, but I don't want to just go there and guess. Alright, verse 10. Malachi 3:1, I was there. I should have... Oh, 3:1. I was in Malachi 4. Ah. Malachi 3 verse 1. Behold, I will send my messenger, and he shall prepare thy way before me. And notice when Jesus quotes, he says, thy way before thee. And the Lord whom you seek shall suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant whom ye delight in. Behold, he shall come, saith the Lord of hosts. They were expecting a Messiah. Like I said, Jesus appeared after 4,000 years of biblical history, meaning if you from the genealogy of Adam. You know how I said at the beginning of Matthew, the genealogy is incomplete, but it's like 14 generations, 14 generations, 14 generations. It just counts whatever, and then it comes up with an even number. Then you look at the genealogies of the Old Testament, and somehow they all line up. Adam, when was Adam created? Oh, 4000 BC, exactly. Or 404. When was Jesus supposedly born? Oh, 4. Exactly 4,000 years later. How do you plan that? Like, you'd have to plan it. There has to be some sort of mental thing going. But somehow in the inspiration, it just worked out that way. Jesus would just happen to be born 4,000 years into the Bible chronology. Because I don't, like I said, I believe the earth is billions of years old. I don't have a problem with that idea. That's what the evidence says. The creation is an unmediated testimony of God's handiwork. Yet, there's something, sometimes I say, you expect the Bible to be a magical book. It is magical in its way. It's certainly magical. There's certainly some magical things going on. And why do you think I spent the past 20 years of my life dedicated to it? 20 years plus. So he's referencing Malachi 3:1, and also there's a implication here of the Malachi 4 verse 5, where he says, "Behold, I will send you Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. And he shall turn the heart of the fathers to the children, and the heart of the children to the fathers, lest I come and smite thee with a curse." It gives some sort of preparation, lest in his coming the Lord be so full of wrath that he curse us all. To try to basically to bring men around, to turn their hearts around, to the hearts of the fathers to the children to the fathers. So Elijah was supposed to come to sort of. There is right now in the world, there's a desire to sort of cast off, among some, obviously, if you're listening to this, you're probably not one of those, but you might be aware of it. They think the religion needs to go, and we should cast off Christianity. But, it is your father. I mean, it's the father of our entire society. Our fathers believed it, they followed it, they kept it, they cherished it. And the people who are advocating for this don't even know the thing they want to destroy. Because whenever I listen to them talk, all they have is some caricature. And this is the work of fundamentalism. And fundamentalism is, I'm telling you, it is I'm going to say something that's going to be offensive. It's satanic. Because look at, Satan was a fundamentalist. He was. When he tempted Jesus, he took out the Bible and he said, "Yeah, here's what the Bible says. And as you know, you ought to interpret it literally. It says he will give his angels charge over you. They will bear you up, lest at any time thou dash thy foot against a stone. So throw yourself off the temple." And Jesus says, "But you shall not tempt the Lord your God." Because the word of God has got to be tempered by all the things we know and learn of him and what the Spirit says. So there's an infinite number of ways to interpret a passage, an infinite number of ways to apply them, but only a very few of them are right. So the fundamentalist position is an impossible position, and there is no such thing as a fundamentalist, ultimately. There's only people who think it's the right way to approach the Bible. But it's not. And I always remember my first teacher saying that, like, well, Satan twisted the words around. That's not, no. That's not how you take that passage. It's like saying the New Testament twists the words around. Because the quotes are different than the Old Testament. If you look at a quote from the New Testament at the Old Testament, they're different. Because our Old Testament is translated from Hebrew, and their Old Testament was the Septuagint. So the words are different. So it's not that Satan changed the words. It's that he was corrupting the meaning by taking it literally. Or suggesting, take this literally. If you throw yourself off this building, there'll be angels to catch you. That's what it says. You know, whoever shall give one of these little ones offense, it's better that a millstone be hanged around their neck and they be cast into the sea. Blessed is everyone who is not offended in me. Jesus was going around offending people, and then he talked about people who offend people need to have rocks hung around their necks and thrown into the ocean. That's what ought to happen. So, or it'd be better for them than to do that. He didn't say that's what should happen to them, but he said it'd be better to be drowned in the sea than to offend one of these little ones. Did he give offense? How do you got to reconcile those? You know what I mean, it can be reconciled. It's not like that hard, but there is a, you know, like we have in Christianity liberty, and that means we're given an amount of leeway in our actions to try to find the right, you know, because the line is not always obvious between right and wrong. Just take murder, or let's say killing. You know, it's wrong to kill, except, you know what I mean? Except when it's time to kill. You know, and when figuring out the difference between the two is not impossible, but it is tricky. You know what I mean? The line between self-defense and murder or manslaughter, or, you know what I mean? Like, where you're going, let's say they have like first degree murder, second degree murder. I don't know if there's a third degree. Manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, self-defense. You know, it's like just this sort of thing of like, you're not supposed to kill, but then sometimes when you kill, they'll just say, well, you know, they were going to kill you. And depending on how much they meant it, how real the intent was, you won't be punished. You know? And it's very there's like that, there's a leeway. We shouldn't use it as an excuse. I mean, you know, when we've done wrong, we've done wrong. And only the blood of Jesus can cleanse us. Thank God for that. Right? But, okay. I'll go back to this. But, yeah. All that just because of the hearts of the fathers to the sons of the fathers. Okay, Paul. It's one way. You're just off on a tangent again. It's nonstop. He is saying that this is Elijah, which was for to come. This is he, the one spoken of in Malachi 3:1. He's preparing the way before me, the Messiah. And he's saying there has not been a greater prophet than John. He is right up there with all the greatest prophets that ever were. And then he says, and we're going to save verse 12 for tomorrow, and that's good because I'm going to have to think about that. Definitely have to pray about it because it's just a difficult verse. Only because it's just like, what does it mean exactly? I remember I ran into, I was part of a church for a while, and they took it in a positive sense. Like, we have to be violent and take the kingdom. You know, we got to be forceful. But that's what it kind of means to be forceful. And I see that, and I'll probably talk about that interpretation and other interpretations. Because it's got to be interpreted. What's it mean? You know, I was saying to someone, I'm like, you know, people often complain about the Bible and they'll say, well, there's all kinds of interpretations. You can interpret it a million different ways. And the implication is, therefore, it's nonsense. That makes life nonsense. You could interpret everything a million different ways. It's like everything, that's... You know what I mean? You can deconstruct everything, and then everything is just nothing, right? There's nothing, anything that has any sense or meaning to it. It's sort of like saying you can't assign meaning to anything because it could mean anything. But that's not realistic, is it? There are many interpretations, but there's only a couple that are anyway viable. I mean, there's only a couple that make any sense. And that goes for life, too. There are an infinite number of ways to interpret events in the world or to interpret events in your life. There's just a few that are actually sensible. And once you know those, then you understand the Bible. You know what I mean? Like if you understand all the viable different interpretations of Matthew 11:12, you know, deciding which one is right is not the big problem. The big problem is finding out all the viable interpretations before you do that. You should think about multiple ways that it could be interpreted so that you can have the ability to actually know not only what you're deciding for, but what you're deciding against. If at all. Sometimes I can't decide because the Spirit doesn't give me knowledge. It doesn't. He teaches all things, but he doesn't teach them all at once. And that is a little bit of a complaint. Yeah, I would like to understand more sooner. But you know, I always find that though, as time goes on, it never fails that I gain more understanding of things or new insights. But it's, you know, I obtain that by sticking with it. By sticking in the Word, by continuing to return to it, we can learn more. We can find out more what symbols mean and what saying, what dark sayings. We can understand dark sentences, like that's what Satan, he understands the dark sentences. That's what it says of in Daniel, right? The vile, there arises a vile person who understands dark sentences. You think about the temptation of Jesus, he's bringing this murky thought out. His angels will come and protect you. What about that? Satan understands, but he's using it. There are people out there who understand what they're doing, and they're doing evil. They're purposely misleading, deceiving. And those are the people who wear soft clothing and dwell in kings' houses. The part I'm not talking about, and I guess we'll pick it up next time. He that is least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. How can that be? It's not obvious to me. John, therefore, is regarded as outside the kingdom. Well, and you think of it as like he has not yet entered into God's kingdom. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. For such is the kingdom of heaven. The one that is least, though, in the kingdom of heaven is greater than he. And it goes to calling on us to be worthy of the kingdom. To be in the kingdom, we have to strive to exceed even John the Baptist. You know what I mean? Jesus sets a very high bar of what it means to be a Christian, what it means to enter into God's kingdom. You know what I mean? Even though we are not, we are unworthy of it. And I think what he's saying is that John also is unworthy of God's kingdom, which is, he just complimented him and then immediately cut him down, which is interesting. He's a great prophet, but the least in the kingdom of heaven is greater than him. That's how great you got to be to get into the kingdom. Greater than the greatest of prophets. That's a tall order. You know what I mean? And that's what necessitates his sacrifice. Because without that sort of assistance, and without the Holy Spirit moving us towards the goal, how could we ever enter into such a place? Like the disciples said, when he talked about the camel going through the eye of the needle, they said to him, well, then who then can be saved? If that's what it takes, if it takes the hardest things to enter into God's kingdom, then who can be saved? It says, with men this is impossible, with God nothing is impossible. Look at, it's all here. All things, the reason possibility exists is because of God. Without God, there is nothing but impossibility. That's the world itself is impossible without God. God is what makes all things possible. Anyways, thanks for joining me today. I look forward to studying with you again tomorrow. There we go, line by line Bible studies. Subscribe, like, etc. So I'll be back tomorrow. We'll continue to study in Matthew. We'll take a closer look at verse 12. I didn't actually read it yet, did I? So, yeah. Anyways, so we will look at that tomorrow and continue in chapter 11. And let's just get some song to go out with.
Make me to wanna understand the way of thy precepts. So shall I talk